Some stories are loud. They are filled with drama, words, and noise. And then there are stories that live in silence, stories told through waiting, through stillness, through loyalty that never asks questions. This is one of those stories, a story from the United Kingdom, a story about a man whose life slowly faded into silence, and a dog whose love refused to fade at all. Scene 1. The Man Who Lived with Silence. In a quiet neighbourhood of Hammersmith, London, there stood a small brick house. It wasn't special, it wasn't new, but it carried memories in its walls. Inside lived Thomas Reed, an elderly man whose life had been shaped by love, and later by loss. Years ago, this house had laughter. There were shared meals, music playing softly, voices calling each other from room to room, but time took its toll. Thomas's wife passed away after a long illness. No children followed. Friends slowly drifted away. What remained was silence. Every night, Thomas sat near the window, watching life move forward outside, while his own seemed frozen. Loneliness doesn't arrive suddenly, it grows quietly. One rainy afternoon, Thomas visited a small animal shelter outside London. He told himself he was only looking, but in the far corner, behind a metal gate, sat a Labrador puppy. The puppy didn't bark, didn't jump, he simply looked. And somehow, that look felt familiar? Thomas knelt down. The puppy walked forward and rested his head against Thomas's chest. At that moment, something inside Thomas broke open. He felt needed again. He whispered softly, "Looks like we both need a second chance." From that day forward, life slowly returned to the house. Every morning, Thomas and Max walked together along the River Thames. Thomas talked, Max listened. He spoke about his past, about mistakes, about love. Max never judged. When Thomas slowed down, Max slowed with him. When Thomas smiled, Max celebrated it. They weren't owner and pet. They were companions. Scene 4. A home filled with meaning, 1.5 minutes. Inside the house, Max filled the emptiness. He waited patiently while Thomas made tea. He slept near the door, guarding what little world they had. When Thomas felt weak, Max stayed closer. When Thomas felt sad, Max leaned in. Love doesn't always speak. Sometimes it simply stays. Scene 5. The winter night that changed everything, 2.5 minutes. One freezing winter night, Thomas felt a sharp pain in his chest. His breath grew heavy, his body collapsed. Max barked desperately, circling him, licking his face, refusing to leave. A neighbor called an ambulance. As paramedics carried Thomas away, Max pulled against the leash with all his strength. Fear filled his eyes. At the hospital, Thomas was rushed inside. Max was left outside. That was the last time he ever saw his human. Scene 6. The waiting begins. 2 minutes. Max sat outside the hospital entrance. He didn't move. Night passed, morning came, but Thomas never returned. Max stayed. Scene 7. Days, weeks, months. 3 minutes. Every day, Max returned to the same spot. Rain soaked his fur, snow covered the ground, summer sun burned the pavement. People came and went, but Max stayed. Dogs don't understand death. They only understand absence. Scene 8. A city learns about loyalty. 2 minutes. People noticed the dog who never left. Photos spread online. News articles followed. Strangers brought food and water. Animal shelters tried to adopt him. Max refused, because loyalty doesn't look for replacements. Scene 9. The jacket, most emotional. 2 minutes. One kind nurse brought Thomas's old jacket. As soon as Max smelled it, he froze. He lay down on it. And for the first time, he cried. That was the moment he understood. Scene 10. Returning home, 1.5 minutes. Max stopped coming to the hospital. He returned to Thomas's house. He waited there instead. Scene 11. The final morning, 1.5 minutes. One quiet morning, neighbors found Max lying peacefully by the door. He had passed away, still loyal, still waiting. Scene 12. A legacy that lives on a memorial plaque was placed outside the hospital. It reads, "Max, a symbol of loyalty that time could not break." People still stop there, they read, they reflect. End message. This story is not about sadness, it's about devotion. Humans move on, dogs wait, humans forget, dogs remember. And sometimes love doesn't end with life. Some stories don't end when life ends. Some stories begin after goodbye. Max and Thomas were gone, but their loyalty stayed behind. In silence, in memory, in the hearts of those who witnessed it. And this is what happened next. The morning after the morning Max was found, the street felt different, quieter. Neighbors gathered slowly. No one spoke loudly. No one hurried. They had seen Max lying there for weeks, waiting. Now he was still. But this time, the stillness was permanent. A woman whispered, "He waited till the very end." And in that moment, everyone understood something powerful. They hadn't just lost a dog. They had lost a lesson. The house that remembered Thomas's house stood silent once again. But it didn't feel empty. Max's paw marks were still near the door. His bowl still sat in the corner. His blanket still carried warmth. A neighbor entered to clean the house. She stopped. She couldn't bring herself to remove anything, because love doesn't disappear. It lingers. The story that spread news outlets returned. But this time the headlines changed. The loyal dog who waited and followed his owner. People across the UK shared the story. Comments flooded in. "I will never see loyalty the same way again." "My dog is sleeping beside me as I read this. We don't deserve dogs." The story crossed borders. Because loyalty has no language. Children learned something. Adults forgot. Schools spoke about Max. Teachers told children, "This is what commitment looks like." Children drew pictures of Max and Thomas. They asked questions adults struggled to answer. Why didn't Max leave? Why did he wait? And one teacher replied softly, "Because love doesn't ask why." The bench by the Thames. Near the River Thames, where Thomas and Max once walked, a bench stood quietly. People began leaving flowers there. Someone carved words into the wood. Sit, stay, love. Visitors sat there, thinking about someone they once lost. The bench became a place of reflection, a place of remembering. A man who couldn't forget a young journalist named Daniel followed the story closely. He had lost his father years ago. He said, "I wish someone had waited for him the way Max waited for Thomas." Daniel began writing a book, not about death, but about staying. The plaque becomes a symbol. The hospital plaque became more than metal. People touched it gently as they passed. Some prayed, some cried, some smiled. One sentence was added beneath it. "If a dog can love like this, so can we." The question we all face. Max never asked questions. He didn't ask how long it would take. He didn't ask if it was worth it. He stayed. And that leaves us with a question. In a world that teaches us to move on quickly, who teaches us how to stay? Love that teaches humans. Psychologists spoke about the story. They said, dogs love without condition. But maybe the truth is simpler. Dogs love without fear. Fear of loss, fear of pain, fear of heartbreak. They love fully, even if it breaks them. A letter left behind, imagined moment. Imagine if Thomas could speak one last time. He would say, "Max, you didn't have to wait." And Max would answer, "I wanted to." Because loyalty is never forced. It's chosen. Why this story matters. This story isn't about sadness. It's about truth. We live in a world of temporary things, temporary promises, temporary relationships, temporary attention. Max reminds us of something permanent. Final message, the legacy. Thomas left quietly. Max followed quietly, but together they left something loud behind. A reminder, a question, a standard. If love is real, would you stay? Because somewhere out there, someone is still waiting. Ending line, slow, deep. Dogs don't teach us how to live. They teach us how to love.